Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri and I am joined by no one. Like many of you, we thought, based on years previous, there was going to be a Nintendo Direct sometime this week. In fact, we thought it was going to be today. And as we all know, that ended up not being the case. And we kind of postponed recording into the last minute, hoping that this Direct would get announced. Unfortunately, it didn't. And by the time that we realized it wouldn't, our schedules got a little bit crisscrossed trying to find time to record. So instead, I have kind of a special treat for you. What you're about to listen to is an episode of the Zelda Cast, which was known as the Champions Cast back then. For anyone that doesn't know, that's a podcast that I do for Zelda Dungeon, obviously focused on the Zelda series. And this episode was pretty cool. It was released in October of 2021, so right after Metroid Dread came out. And my co-host Alasyn had never played a Metroid game. And I had won a bet, and her punishment for losing the bet was she had to play Super Metroid for the first time. So the episode that you're about to listen to is her thoughts on Super Metroid, our discussion about the intertwined histories of Zelda and Metroid, and just some talk about Metroid Dread in general. So I hope that you guys enjoy, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode, and fingers crossed for that Nintendo Direct, where hopefully, maybe, we can get a look at Metroid Prime 4. Until then, take care, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like listening to the Zelda Cast, go on over and subscribe. You can hear Alasyn and I every week. And like I said, we'll be back next week in our usual time. Champions Cast here on ZeldaDungeon.net. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Alasyn Aletha. Al, how you doing? You're a little bit tired, I assume, hey?
I'm recovering. I'm tired. I stayed up late playing this game that we're going to talk about today. And also, I just want to say to everybody who wanted me to play Super Metroid and knew what was going to happen at the end, you're all in trouble.
Wow.
You're all in trouble, and I may never forgive you.
We were kind of talking about the baby Metroid and baby Yoda.
I know.
Was that on the show or was that in Discord?
That was on last episode, and I was talking about an octopus, and you were right. It's definitely not an octopus. It's more like It's not even it's like a jellyfish. It's this. We'll get into it.
All right. So obviously, guys, something major went down this weekend. The first new 2D Metroid game in 19 years. Technically, that's not true, but the first one to advance the story in 19 years dropped. Metroid Dread is finally out, and I'm going to level with everybody listening to this Zelda podcast. We're not going to really be talking about Zelda a whole lot this week. We're going to mostly be talking about Metroid. But our hope is that because it is two people that you listeners know that are so entwined with Zelda, we are hoping that you stick around to hear a Zelda fan's perspective on Metroid. So that way, if you've never tried it, maybe you can consider it. I got Alasyn to play Super Metroid for the first time, and maybe she'll even get Metroid Dread. We will be talking about kind of the intertwined histories of Zelda and Metroid a little bit, but let's be frank, this is mostly going to be a Metroid show, and next week we'll get back to like the full-blown Zelda, but I mean, man, you only get an opportunity like this once in a blue moon for a Metroid fan. So I feel like we could call the audible, make the exception this week, and really go all in on this topic. Are we okay to cheat like that, do you think, Al?
Yeah, for sure. I think I do have a lot of thoughts as a Zelda fan for this game, things I noticed and stuff. So if you haven't ever played Metroid, I'd stick around. Even though you might not have interest, I think you will. So yeah, let's do it.
Let's just jump right into it. As you guys may remember, back in E3, when I used science to prove to Alasyn that Breath of the Wild 2 was going to be shown, even though what was shown was fairly lackluster and not filling at all, as we've talked about many times on this podcast. But science won nevertheless, and Breath of the Wild 2 showed up. The stipulation for me being victorious in our E3 bet was that Alasyn had to play Super Metroid, and she did. She pulled a, not quite an all-nighter, but I mean pretty close. I know you'd go to bed pretty early, and you were messaging me at like 3 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I played all day Friday. My plan was to play the whole weekend, and then I started playing, and like I said, we'll get into this part, but I started playing yesterday, and several parts made me extremely angry, so I went and took a break for a while, and then I came back, and then I came back in the evening and then played until 2 o'clock my time, so, which is fine because I like to stay up late on the weekends because I have to go to bed so early for work during the week, so it was totally fine. I was okay with that part. It was just the emotional trauma that I experienced throughout that really did me in. So, yeah, I'm recovering. I may be a little delirious, but I have thoughts.
All right. So, before we get into your detailed thoughts about Super Metroid, and I'm going to give some thoughts about Metroid Dread. I'm not going to give a lot of it away. I'm saving that for the Omega Metroid pod. But I do have some preliminary thoughts that I do want to discuss. But before we do all of that, I have, for the last, I don't know, many, many years, kind of had this theory fermenting about Zelda and Metroid. Because if you look at them, back in like the NES era, I think that like the big 3 Nintendo games were, or I guess franchises rather, were Mario, Zelda, and Metroid. They all did really well on the Nintendo Entertainment System. And then for whatever reason, it seemed like the trajectory of Mario and Zelda went up, and Metroid kind of went down, down, down. And let's take Mario out of the equation, because obviously we know that that's like the Mickey Mouse of Nintendo, and that was always going to be, you know, a hit. But I have some theories, but I'm curious, Alasyn, if you can, I don't know, nail down anything, any reasons where you're just like, this is why Zelda became the mega franchise it was, and this is why Metroid never quite got there. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
You know, it's kind of hard to say. I haven't played the first 2 Metroid games, which I think there's 2 before this one, right? And
Correct.
I apologize for any Metroid fans who know all this information. I literally don't know anything about Metroid except now Super Metroid. That's it. That's all my information. So I haven't played the first 2 games, and I imagine I imagine that at the time, it's so hard to say as a Zelda fan. I feel like Zelda would have been more compelling of an adventure, maybe a little bit easier. I feel like Metroid is definitely, if I'm comparing Super Metroid and A Link to the Past, which both came out around the same time, Metroid seems harder. So perhaps, you know, Zelda just seemed more compelling, a little bit easier to get through, more colorful, you know, stuff like that maybe it just took off a little bit more, and Nintendo, you know, took that and like dug their nails in and were like, okay, we're going to make Zelda the biggest thing versus, you know, putting a lot more energy into Metroid. That's kind of all I can say on the matter with my knowledge, so I'd like to hear what your theories are.
So my theory, and actually before we get into my theory, this just randomly popped in my head, but I feel like it's appropriate. So I was talking about Metroid to my family. We were having Thanksgiving dinner last night. We have Thanksgiving in October here in Canada. So we were having Thanksgiving dinner last night, and my brother-in-law, his girlfriend is big into video games as well. So we always have a lot to talk about. And I was talking about Metroid Dread, and I was telling him about Metroid and stuff like that. And my brother-in-law's girlfriend is like, oh yeah, that looks kind of cool, but like, man, I saw the trailer for that new Kirby game. I'm really excited. And I was just like, ah.
That's awesome.
But I actually bring that up because I think that there's a point to that.
Yeah.
In that, so it kind of like what I was saying a couple weeks ago when I cut that scathing promo on Kirby. I really do believe that that's true, where like Nintendo really knows how to promote its kind of like cutesy franchises. Mario, Kirby, Animal Crossing, even Splatoon is kind of cutesy. It really has a knack for getting the machine behind those with the plushies and the lunchboxes and the Mario cereal or whatever, right? Whereas Metroid and Zelda, like, they were very different. Like, one was a space sci-fi, and then the other was kind of this, like, almost medieval fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
But then, yeah, one of them took off, and one of them didn't. And for years, I've always kind of, like, tried to wrap my head around why that was. And I do think that Zelda is probably closer to that traditional, like, cutesy kind of presentation that we know Nintendo really favors, particularly after the Wind Waker came out, and when you had that other aesthetic presentation that they could, make the plushies of, make the marketing material of, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like there is a lot of other circumstantial, I don't know, evidence or just happenings around them maybe that maybe helped push Zelda over the edge and maybe held Metroid back a little bit. First and foremost, you have to realize that, like, back on the NES, I think that Metroid is in the top 10 selling NES games. I could be wrong. Maybe it's top 15, but, like, it's pretty high up there. It did almost 3 million units compared to the original NES Zelda. Again, I'm pulling this from memory, but I think the original NES Zelda did, like, 4.5. So it's not like this ginormous gap that you actually might think. So it would stand to reason that Metroid would have gotten a sequel, and it did, but it was on the Game Boy. And I feel like maybe that hurt it a little bit because I think that for a long time there was a perception among fans that maybe the Game Boy games were not as important, or maybe they were just not worth playing because they were, typically smaller scale adventures. I'm not sure. But then you go on to the Super Nintendo, and you mentioned that Metroid and Link to the Past came out in and around the same time, and it's actually a lot longer in between games than you might actually think.
Oh, okay.
So, A Link to the Past came out in Japan in 1991, and then in 1992 in North America, whereas Super Metroid came out in the tail end of 1994. And this is, I'm pretty sure, if the Nintendo 64 had not been announced already, it was being rumored and talked about. So, like, I feel like it was already kind of living in the shadow of the N64. And then, of course, they skipped the N64 Metroid title, whereas Zelda got this, amazing, incredible Ocarina of Time game, and then, the Majora's Mask follow-up, and all of that. So, I feel like that really kind of derailed some of the momentum that Metroid had. I think Metroid got it back in the GameCube area with Metroid Prime and that trilogy, and you had Fusion and Zero Mission, but again, it never really took off. It kind of faltered after Metroid Prime 3, and then Other M came out, which was a complete disaster. And I don't know. I guess my theory I've always just thought is, like, Nintendo, they never really understood why Metroid fans love Metroid, and I think that Metroid fans love Metroid because it's not really like any other Nintendo series. Like, you have this awesome space-faring alien Odyssey, whereas the rest of the Nintendo franchises are, for the most part, fairly, I don't want to say grounded, because they're not. They have, like, talking animals and stuff like that, but, like, they kind of exist within, like, the same kind of universe, if you will. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I think I understand. This is definitely visually.
There's, like, some common themes.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Visually, like a lot of other franchises, they are much prettier to look at, cuter to look at. You kind of get a little bit of a better feeling while you're playing it. I know that some games in those series are not, as pretty, as flashy, but Metroid definitely has, like, this kind of gritty, visual to it and feel to it, at least as I've seen in this one game alone. So I could understand what you're saying there, and what you said about the time frame of when A Link to the Past came out and Super Metroid came out. I didn't realize it was, like, basically 2 years apart, and I think that is probably the failing there, is they should have come out a lot closer. And yeah, because I think because of that huge gap, people kind of forgot that it was there. They were kind of like, oh yeah, Metroid's a thing, coming out 2 years later after this amazing epic of A Link to the Past. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think that hindered it.
So yeah, I think that the thing that I've always kind of landed on is that I feel like Nintendo really never understood why Metroid fans love Metroid, and then like a lot of other circumstantial things around it, and like some really bad timing too, because there's like in Zelda, you've never seen a game freeze like you've seen in the Metroid series. I think the longest that we've went between like big releases was, I don't know, a couple years, maybe like 3 years. Like from A Link Between Worlds to Breath of the Wild was 4 years, and that's the longest one that I can remember. And there was like Triforce Heroes in there, and there was Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD. So that doesn't even count. Like in Metroid, you literally have 8 year gaps where there is nothing, like no new games, no nothing, which makes it hard to kind of sustain momentum and credibility, I feel like. So, anyways, those are my long-standing theories about why these franchises never really took off, like, or why Metroid rather never really took off like Zelda did, which is funny because like you can literally trace them back to 35 years ago this year and kind of watch the differences between them and how the trajectories kind of change and at times intermingle, but then go in opposite directions. So I've always thought that that's really fascinating because these are like obviously my two favorite franchises ever. So it's an interesting correlation.
Yeah, it is definitely a thing to think about, and it kind of makes this year make sense, and I feel like that's going to be our next topic here.
Yep. Yep. Go for it. Like,
okay. Yeah, like the 35th
compare
anniversary.
Metroid 35 and Zelda 35.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like this year and the marketing for Metroid Dread and the announcement of it, the hype for it, the push for it on Nintendo's social media over the last few days, especially when you compare it to Age of Calamity DLC, which has been very minimal. And we were talking about that a couple weeks ago. We're like, this is kind of weird. They last year they were posting something once a week, and this year they're not really doing much. And I think it makes sense because maybe Nintendo knows that they've kind of been doing Metroid a little dirty, and they wanted to hype it up. They wanted to give Metroid fans, this big, amazing, like comeback, if you will, for Metroid. You've got the game that is visually just very great looking. From the trailers that I've seen, the music looks great. The tension looks great. It definitely, and I can't speak for the other, handful of games in between 1994 and now, but it definitely has upped its game, effects and visual wise. And then they also have like, a special edition release. They've got Amiibo. They've got like all these great marketing tools on Twitter and stuff. I feel like for once, instead of giving Zelda all the attention like we thought they would this year, they kind of put all their eggs in Metroid's basket. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree, actually. So a long-standing criticism, and actually probably another reason that Metroid hasn't taken off in quite the same way that Zelda or Mario or any of those guys have, is that there's kind of like a chicken and an egg scenario, where it's like Metroid games have this notion or this, I guess, reputation of not selling particularly well, and they don't sell like it's not Pokemon, right? But it doesn't sell particularly well because it never really gets a strong advertisement campaign behind it. And it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. Like, it doesn't sell well because you don't advertise it. You don't advertise it because it doesn't sell well. Mm-hmm. So, like, one of those has to change in order for it to kind of level up. And obviously the one that needs to change is you need to advertise it. And I remember when Metroid Prime came out, I was in a movie and I saw a commercial, like a trailer for Metroid Prime at the movie theater. And it was so cool. And that game sold really well for a Metroid game. It's still the highest selling Metroid game ever. And like I think that the promotion for Dread has finally been what Metroid fans have long craved, where it's like it really, like you said, it's like we're all in on this Metroid Dread game, and like we are promoting it. Every time I open YouTube, there's a Metroid Dread ad. There are billboards, there's buses, they went all in on Metroid Dread. And so there's no reason now for this game not to do well. And I think it's very quickly going to become the highest selling Metroid game. And hopefully this can like permanently level it up. But like, yeah, it's kind of funny because like you look at Metroid 35 and you look at Zelda 35 and I know that we got Skyward Sword this year, which was fantastic. And I know that we got like a sneak peek at Breath of the Wild 2, which was also fantastic. But yeah, to me, it just seems like really this has been kind of Metroid's time to shine. Ever since E3, it really feels like Nintendo's been all in with Metroid. There's new amiibo. There's like you said, the collector edition. And like, I guess that I was actually checking my Amazon account the other day because I was trying to track down my collector edition Metroid Dread, which did not ship, by the way. So I had to line up and buy one day of, which I was lucky enough to get. But I also saw that I have my Zelda 35th Game & Watch on there. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about this thing. Do I even want this? And I actually still don't know if I want it, because I feel like it's like $70 for a Game & Watch that I know that I'm never going to play. Like, because if I'm going to play Adventure of Link or The Legend of Zelda or Link's Awakening, it's going to be on the Switch or it's going to be on my 3DS. I'm not going to bust out this like tiny little Game & Watch. So I'm actually not even sure if I want this thing. It's kind of cool that they have it, but it's funny that we're talking about how one of these series kind of went up and one of them went, if not down, then plateaued. But now we're as close to intermingling as maybe we've ever been with the series.
Yeah, and
because I mean, Metroid 35 has been huge.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you said this earlier this year that they're paying more attention to Metroid Dread. I just didn't understand it at the time, and I still don't quite. I'm not quite at your level because I haven't played the whole series and I haven't spent years and years invested in the series like a lot of Metroid fans have. But I understand a little bit better more. Like, I have more context, and I think that's what other Zelda fans should understand, because I'm sure it's been a very hot topic this year about Zelda 35th anniversary and how it's kind of fell flat. But, Nintendo's a market with very many IPs, and sometimes they can't concentrate on your favorite one every single time, So I'm super excited for you and for everybody who's been like so jazzed about this game and so invested in this franchise. I understand a little bit better now, and I'm just super excited for you guys. So I hope everybody has really been liking Dread, and I'm super excited to hear your thoughts about it, because I definitely am 10 times more invested and will be playing that game soon.
Okay, so you know what? I was going to save my thoughts on Dread for last, but actually I want to save your stuff for last, because I think that's the real meat and potatoes. So I'm going to give you some sneak peeks at my thoughts on Metroid
Okay.
Dread. I beat the game. I finished it in about 8.5 hours ish, which does not actually take into account all the times that you die. Mm-hmm. If you play Metroid Dread, get ready to see the game over screen like multiple times. This is, I think that I might say that it's the hardest Metroid game.
Oh wow.
It's quite hard. And not in the sense of like, because I think actually Super Metroid is a hard Metroid game, but more so in the fact that like you have no idea where to go. Whereas Metroid Dread is just hard. Like, if an enemy hits you, that's like half an energy tank. It's out the window. So it's a hard game, but it's refreshing. And so I beat the game 8.5 hours. I went back and I got 100% items in about 10.5 hours. I'm just on my second playthrough right now. There's tons of replayability. There's like a bunch of different endings. Like, I don't want to, not different endings, but like there's different rewards for different endings based on your time, based on your item completion, etc., etc. So lots of incentive to play again. I think that you could make a case and say that this might be the best Metroid game. I think that for me, nostalgia would probably put Super Metroid over the edge, but like, this is like, it was awesome. It was really, really good. A few things that I'm gonna kind of pick apart, but certainly nothing that would, cause me to say like, oh, this is a bad experience. For the most part, it was just like so awesome. And Alasyn, you get to see Big Daddy Kraid come back, and I want to hear more about your adventures with Kraid. But I've always been a big Kraid fan. Ridley comes back in like every Metroid game, and I've been campaigning for Kraid to come back for years. So when I saw him pop back up in Metroid Dread, it was absolutely, I popped off. I was just like, oh my god, this is awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, it's such a really, really great game. It looks awesome. It runs awesome. Totally worth the wait. And the ending was nuts. It was nuts.
I mean, I was already sold, so I'm excited. I'm not really looking forward to the difficulty because I had a very hard time with Super Metroid, and maybe I'm just a weenie or something, but like sometimes really difficult games just make me. It's funny because I never thought I was a rage gamer, but I very much was in the last 2 days. And you know what's
Right.
funny is like from my understanding, you were telling me that Metroid Fusion, is that it, was the hardest one. Oh
No,
no,
so
other people were
I've
telling me
heard,
that.
yeah, I've heard that Metroid Fusion is like the hardest Metroid game, and I actually think that it's pretty easy
But
in term because there's two different types of difficulty in Metroid. There's the difficulty of enemies hit you hard, and then there's the difficulty of I have no idea where to go.
yeah,
Certainly, in terms of I have no idea where to go, that doesn't even exist in Metroid Fusion. You always know where to go.
okay.
And if you're, I'd say if you're competent at Metroid, I think it's easy, but maybe I'm just like super awesome at Metroid. I don't know.
And you know what? I have a very fun. Oh, this is gonna make some people mad. I have a fun hot take later on this episode, and it has to do with that. It has to do with how efficiently you could play these games.
All right. Well, Alasyn.
Yeah.
We've talked about Zelda. We've talked about Metroid Dread. We've talked about the intertwined histories of our two favorite franchises. Well, my two favorite franchises. Let's finally get to it. You played Super Metroid. You ordered a pizza on Friday.
Yeah.
You stayed up. What did you think? I'm going to leave this show to you. You can kind of structure it however you want, and I can respond if you. Yeah, the ball is in your court. Tell us what you thought about playing this game for the first time, and maybe why anybody listening to this that has not played it should give it a go, and what to expect.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me just throw out this disclaimer. Once again, I apologize. I don't have that much information. You know what's funny is sometimes I watch TikToks, and I know you're not a huge TikTok person, Andy, but other people are, and I see TikToks where people are having their first reactions to things like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, how have you gone your whole life? These movies have started like, Star Wars forever ago, and then Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, 20 years ago. And how have you gone your whole life without knowing these spoilers? I was that person with I had no idea about anything in Metroid. So I apologize. I also don't know the names of anything, so just keep that in mind. Andy, I might be like, hey,
I'll help you out.
what's
Don't
this
worry.
wormy boss's name or whatever. I'm also gonna pull up your guide so I can have some help. But so there's that. Everybody just bear in mind and bear with me. I actually really, really liked this game. It was a lot of fun as a whole, I would say. There was a lot of parts that like I said, I rage quit. Like it was hard. And I do remember coming back to A Link to the Past, several years after my initial playthrough and being like, this game is a lot harder than I thought. And I feel like Nintendo just went and took some of the better games of these series and we're just like, we're gonna ramp up the difficulty level for you guys just to make you mad. But I really enjoyed getting to know this series, I guess, with this game, and I think it was probably the best game that you could have had me play for my first time in the Metroid series, because I don't know if I would have got the same enjoyment from the original Metroid or anything else for that matter, because I might have been even more lost. But I felt like this was a good starting point. Would you say this is what you would tell most new people to play?
So I was going to jump in quick, actually, because you mentioned that. So I think that there are 3 games that are really good entry points into the series. Probably the absolute best entry point to the series is Metroid Zero Mission.
Okay.
And that is because it's chronologically the first game in the series, so you have that. Not that the story of Super Metroid and Zero Mission are like 90% the same story. But Zero Mission it's quite easy. You always know where to go. It's just like a good little game. It's a good entry point. It's the only problem is that obviously it's not really widely available yet. So
I see.
It's not. I guess you could buy it on the Wii U, but I think that nobody wants to dust out their Wii U. Super Metroid is obviously another excellent entry into the series. That was my entry into the series. It's probably like Metroid in its truest form. There are some aspects about the controls of Super Metroid that haven't aged as gracefully as other aspects, and that's a lot of it's to do because of the lack of buttons on the original SNES controller. And I'm anticipating you bringing that up later in the show when we talk about it. But I think that, like, in terms of like atmosphere, exploration, the bosses, and just kind of like learning the language of Metroid, if you will, I think that Super Metroid is top of the list. And like kind of on its own thing too. But another great entry into the series would be Metroid Prime.
I see.
And that one is just because it's so. Metroid Prime has the same language and it has the same DNA, but obviously it just controls a lot differently, just based on the fact that it is told from the first person. So I think any of those three would actually be a decent entry into the series. Of the three, I think that Super Metroid is probably the most difficult. So I'm curious if, like, when you're saying that you found it difficult, do you mean in terms of the enemies or in terms of not knowing where to go, or both?
A little bit of both. I don't think like the majority of the enemies that you see are particularly hard. It was definitely the bosses that were very difficult for me. And this was actually my first time using the rewind feature. And let me just tell you, I used it very heavily.
You got to play Adventure of Link using that. It completely changes the game. It really does.
God, gross. So, I mean, I used that a lot, especially with the bosses, but also a couple times where I found that I was lost and I wanted to sort of. So I would definitely say not knowing where to go. And that, I feel like it's an odd thing to complain about because it's a game that came out, nearly 30 years ago. So thank you, Super Metroid, for reminding me that I'm almost 30. And, like, it's such a weird thing to complain about, but I feel like a lot of information was severely lacking in this game, and I'm sure that they've progressed since then. Like, the Metroid games are a lot more informative about the name of your enemies, the name of your bosses. Then the names were on when you opened up the map of the different areas. The names were there, but I kind of wish there was I don't know, like a sign saying, hey, this way to Brinstar. You know what I mean?
Right.
Also, the fact that if I didn't have your guide, so Andy Spiteri here has written a complete 100% guide to this game. If I didn't have your guide, I would have never progressed in this game because it doesn't say once you beat a boss, like, if you consider A Link to the Past, it's like, hey, you gotta go, get all these talismans and then go get the Master Sword and then go and get all the go to defeat all the other 8 dungeons in the game or whatever, and then you go fight the big bad at the end. It kind of like guides you a little bit, whereas this game does not. It just drops you and it's like, okay, have fun, bye.
Nope.
And
welcome to Metroid.
And I was like, I didn't like that. I'm sorry, I'm just not that I guess intuitive with games where I'm like, okay, I beat this boss and I got this item. I guess now I should go, back up to Norfair or Brinstar and, like, go get other items or progress differently in a different area because it just didn't explain anything. So I was a little bit frustrated with that, and I'm hopeful that is fixed later on. Is that fixed?
Well, I mean, kind of. And actually, to back up to your first point about enemy names, map names, and stuff like that, I think that it is kind of important to remember as well that this was... When you play SNES games, that's kind of a casualty. One of the things along the years that doesn't come with SNES games anymore is like the manual that would have came when you bought the game or when you rented it from Blockbuster or something, where it's just like, hey, you can hold down A to dash, or like you can this is called a gamer, or this is called a side hopper, or whatever. So a lot of that information that is in the manual isn't in like the digital game in 2021. So that is unfortunately kind of a thing that we need to contend with. But I mean, in terms of, that's a Metroidvania. Like, it drops you down, and typically you don't really have a lot of direction where to go. Now, the thing that you need to do is really study your map and see when if you can look at an area and you can see like I advanced here, but advancement stopped. I wonder if now that I have this new item, I can advance further.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the hallmark of a Metroidvania. I will say that Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Prime, a lot of these newer Metroid games do kind of give you a slight indication of where to go. Like, for example, in Zero Mission, you can find a Chozo statue that will direct you to a point on the map. It doesn't say anything else, but it's like, this is a point of interest. Make your way here. And it tells you how to get there. And Metroid Prime will do the same thing, where it says, like, hey, something is happening in this room, 2 areas over and across the map. It doesn't tell you how to get there, but it tells you that this is the general direction that you need to go. And that's very much kind of the core DNA of Metroidvanias. So I want to say that it does get a little bit better, but also kind of sort of not. Like, in a Metroidvania, and this is true for Castlevania or Hollow Knight or Ori, it really is up to you to, like, study your environment and, be inquisitive to see if, now that I've got the speed booster, can I get past this area where previously I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I can kind of see that, especially now that I know what a lot of the items and upgrades do, which was another factor I was frustrated with, because I would get, like, the morphing ball, and I'm like, what the heck do I do with this? Like, there's no little ditty if I pause and look at Samus's suit that tells me what the heck this thing does. Or the Varia suit, that's like the first suit upgrade. I didn't know that you could go into, like, toxic areas with that. I had no idea.
I love that you call it the morphing ball. I take for granted, like, just it's called the morph ball, but, like, it's called the morphing ball in Super Metroid.
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to try. I just love that. That's fantastic.
I mean, well, for real, like, there's nothing that really explains what these upgrades do, which is a little bit frustrating, because I also didn't know that you could, like, break through walls, and I keep in mind, Andy, I was trying to play this game a lot by myself before I would go to your guide. I went to your guide, like, once I was lost. So once I actually read what the heck these items do on Andy's guide, I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know that I could break through the wall above me with the screw attack. You know what I mean? So I found that a little bit frustrating, and I guess for certain players, that is kind of nice, because you get the freedom. I know people complain about the linearity of Zelda games, but with Metroid, you kind of get to explore and figure out for yourself, what these things do, what areas you can finally unlock, that sort of thing. And I get why players like that. For me, I'm just worried that I'm like, do I know everything that I'm actually supposed to know at this point? Is there something that I'm missing? And I will always have that fear or that concern while I'm playing the game, because, like I said, there are some things I just didn't get. Is that also something that is, improved upon later?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a casualty of just being almost a 30-year-old game.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you there. I think that, like, as a veteran fan, like, I kind of take that for granted, because I know that once I get the gravity suit, I can go in lava. And, like, I know that once I get the morph ball, you press down twice and then you're rolling along your way. But it really doesn't do a good job of kind of explaining how to use those properties. So that's definitely something that, like, Metroid Dread, for example, will explicitly tell you, like, hey, you've got the speed booster. You can do this with it. If you do this, you can shine spark, et cetera, et cetera. And it details you how to do that. And actually, I want to say, I don't know if Metroid Fusion does that, but I know that all the subsequent games, at least after that, will say, like, this is how you, like, shine spark, or, like, this is what your Varia suit does, et cetera, et cetera. So that's something that I think that players like me definitely take for granted.
Okay. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah, definitely if you're into Metroid, you would understand those things. I didn't, so it definitely, as far as how I initially wanted to play this game, I kind of just wanted to get through it and get a broad understanding, but I feel like now that I understand everything a little bit better, I probably could go back and see a lot more than I saw, because there were other things like, and these are comparable to things in Zelda games, like bombable walls, invisible walls, areas where you can see a hint in Zelda and you're like, oh, I can get there. And it was funny because I was reading your guides and you're like, this wall is begging to be bombed, and I'm like, it looks just like the rest of the walls. It looks exactly the same. I have no idea what you're talking about, Andy Spiteri. So I feel like that was also a little bit frustrating, where I was just like, I don't know these games, so how am I supposed to know that I can go down here or up here? And what I liked is that in some areas you could get the map a little bit earlier and you could see, oh, there is a room over here. So I do know that I need to go through an invisible wall here. So I did like that. And I wish that they had the map early on everywhere. Because I feel at some points I was getting the map at the end. Like, I think it was Norfair. I was like, oh, thanks. I got a map at the end of being done with Norfair, which I got lost in for 3 hours.
Oh, boy. What, just out of curiosity, what was your completion time for the game?
You know what? The game said 6 hours, but it wasn't taking into account how many times I died, rewind,
I see.
sat there on my phone trying to figure things out. I want to say it was like 14 to 15 hours.
I was, how old would I have been? 11 or 12 when I played Super Metroid for the first time on my SNES. I was like 17 hours until I beat the game, and I wasn't even close to all the items.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I can definitely feel your pain.
I didn't.
And back then, like, all that existed was like a game facts guide, and it wasn't very good, and there was no pictures, there was no routes or nothing like that. So yeah, I feel your pain there for sure.
Yeah, and you know, I also didn't go for 100%. That was another thing where I started to, and I was like, you know what, I have time in the future to do 100%. For now, I'm just trying to get through the game. So I got 50%. Right. So I felt pretty good about that.
Yeah, that ain't bad.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And you know, some things were easier to spot than others. So I will compare the two series and say that they have similar ideas as far as like secrets, how to defeat enemies, how to conserve your life, and you know, ways to prepare before a boss battle, that kind of stuff. It's all very similar. So I was like getting all the Zelda feels while I was playing, and I really enjoyed that. I did like a lot of the visuals. The music was actually really good. I really liked the music, and I felt like the wrecked ship felt very piratey. And the Ridley's Lair felt very Hyrule Castle at the end of the game, so I knew I was getting close. So I appreciated the music for what it was. And then also I appreciated some of the areas were very subtle with its music, so I was able to like concentrate instead of be focused on, you know, really bombastic sounds. It was more kind of in the background while I was trying to think. So I really liked that, actually. But that's all like technical stuff in the game. For like the story, I thought it was kind of interesting because if you compare it to A Link to the Past, I feel like that was when Zelda really started getting its stride as far as storytelling goes, and it really had this big, you know, attached story to it, as well as the adventure. I feel like Super Metroid, if I could guess that the first two games didn't have a lot of information, it was trying to start a story, and I was like, oh, look, there's the baby Metroid. I'm super excited to see him when we were talking about him last week. And, you know, and I was like, oh, but is he evil? You know, I was kind of a little worried. And
you know what? I'm gonna interrupt you just for 1 second, actually, give my 2 cents on something.
Okay.
I think that the story of Metroid really started in Metroid 2, actually, for the Game Boy. Because Metroid 1 was kind of your standard, like, the space pirates have got these Metroids, and they are using them for evil purposes. And it didn't really give you a whole lot of background information on what a Metroid was, who created it, the Chozo, anything like that. Whereas in Metroid 2, the story is very simple. It's like, Samus must eradicate all the Metroids, and that's your premise for the whole game. But the ending of the game, which Super Metroid kind of outlines in the opening prologue, where the baby Metroid hatches, and it's all cute and floating around Samus, and it thinks that Samus is its mother. That was like very much set up the story for, like, you know, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Dread in a lot of ways. So like I think it actually really started in Metroid 2.
Okay, and that's fair. I wouldn't have known that. So I think that it was like getting its footing, I feel, but it still wasn't detailed enough for me because I was left with a lot of questions, and I think that's fine because it was only the third game in the series. I think if you were a Super Metroid fan, like not like Super Metroid, but like an actual real hardcore Metroid fan at the time, you were also very interested in more of the story. And maybe there was more background on Samus and who the heck Mother Brain is and what the heck these Metroids are, in those first 3 games that I don't know about. But I feel like I definitely was wanting more by the end. I feel like the story was mostly about Samus and Baby Metroid. So that's kind of...
Pretty much, yeah. At this point, there really wasn't, like, any indication of, like, who Samus is, what the Metroids were, who created them. The Chozo were very much a mystery. They still very much are a mystery, actually. But yeah, it's really, you nailed it. This game is really about Samus and the Baby Metroid.
Okay.
For sure. I thought that when I first played it, I thought that the opening prologue really gave me everything that I needed to know.
Yeah.
And I felt fine playing like this without having played Metroid or Metroid 2 back in the day, like the first time that I ever played Super Metroid.
Yeah, and I agreed. Like, the summary, I did say that on my notes that the summary of the first 2 games was nice, so I appreciated having that. I just was, I think by the end, I was like, okay, I really want to know what Samus' story is. I'd like to know her lore.
Right.
I'd like to know if she's, like, super powerful and the suit enhances her, or if the suit is, like, where most of her powers are. And you know what's funny is I talked to my brother Shad, who likes, I don't think he's played Metroid, but he's into like the lore and stuff of it. So I was talking to him last night after I finished, and he told me a little bit of information, and I was just like, what the heck? And it made me like, it made me a little bit more invested. So by the end, I was like, I really, really want to know more about this whole series, this whole franchise, the story. So for this singular game, I did like its story, especially, and I think everybody knew I would because it's got a Baby Metroid, and y'all know I love Baby Yoda and Baby Guardian, and so I was invested in saving poor Baby Metroid from this giant pterodactyl thing, and which I know is Ridley, but that's when I first saw him, I was like, ew, what is this ugly pterodactyl mother doing with my Baby Metroid? Takes my Baby Metroid away, I gotta go save it. So that's what I was doing, and I thought it was super cute because it was a bounty hunter going to save a little baby alien. So of course, being a huge Mandalorian fan, I loved it. I ate it up. So I enjoyed the story, especially at the end, because I got super invested when I saw my Baby Metroid had been huge. And I'm going to post my notes for everybody. I'm gonna have to redact some words, but
maybe get that filter out to make it a little bit blurry.
I showed Andy. I was like, this is how I'm doing.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so towards the end, I was getting excited because, yes, I'm going to save my little baby, jellyfish. He's so cute. And then it turns out he's really big now, and he's, like, sucking the friggin' energy out of all these aliens and attacks me. And I was like, no, Baby Metroid, I'm your friend. And then he realized I'm just assuming it's a he, realized who I was and, like, was sad and ran away. And I was like, it's okay, I forgive you. And then, of course, you get to the end of this game, and I hate all of you for doing this to me, but Baby Metroid saves you from Mother Brain, and I was like, oh, yay, he saved me. And then Mother Brain kills him.
Not only does he save you, he gives you the power to be... So to set the scene for anyone that's not played this game.
Oh yeah, spoiler alert for this 30-year-old game, by the way.
We just full out spoiled the ending of Super Metroid here, but also whatever. So Mother Brain has nailed you with, we call this in the Metroid community, the murder beam. Beam. You are just like completely blitzed. You're down. You can't move. You're getting pelted by all of like Mother Brain's grotesque stuff. She's hurling stuff at you, and just when she's about to murder beam you again, the Baby Metroid comes in, and the Baby Metroid by now is ginormous. Huge. And actually is called the Super Metroid, which is actually the reason why the game is called Super Metroid.
Okay.
I mean, that's probably not true. It's called Super Metroid because it was on the Super Nintendo, but you get the idea. So it sucks the life out of Mother Brain, gives that life energy to Samus. Samus has the Hyper Beam, but as it's doing so, as it's protecting Samus, Mother Brain extinguishes the Baby Metroid.
Oh, I was
sad.
And
it's super sad.
I was so sad at 1:30 in the morning. And
I think that this is like it's such a simple story. Like I would say that Super Metroid has like and like an amazing story in the sense of like the overall narrative is like there's this big mystery or like something to like I think that the planet tells the story and the atmosphere tells the story, but like this scene, man, it's so good. It's so simple, but like it's just like it's so heart-wrenching to see that. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
great
and
stuff.
I kind of wish I had seen a little bit of the end. I'm guessing of 2, where you first find Baby Metroid and Baby Metroid thinks Samus is its mother. So I kind of wish I had seen that, but even still not seeing that, I was super invested in this story, and it just destroyed me because I was like,
Can I break your heart even more?
Yeah.
So in Samus Returns, spoiler.
Oh no.
But at the no, this is good. At the end of the game, where Metroid 2 ends, the baby Metroid pops out and the game is over. In Samus Returns, which is a remake of Metroid 2, the baby Metroid pops out, and actually you then play the rest of the game. There's like a bunch of other secrets and stuff, and there's another boss, an extra boss. But the baby Metroid floats around you for the remainder of the game and helps you acquire some of like the remaining power-ups and stuff. It's super awesome because like you get to play with the baby Metroid around you. You have like this rapport. It deepens your relationship and it enhances Super Metroid retroactively. So like, it's so good.
So it would just destroy me even more if I...
Yes. Yeah, because you get to play with the little babies, just like this little squishy Metroid. He's super cute. Yeah, it's devastating.
If anybody out there knows where I could find a Baby Metroid sticker to add my sticker collection, because I've got some Baby Yodas and I got some BBG, but I need Baby Metroid now, so hit me up if you all know where one is. But yeah, it was just like, it was so heartbreaking, and I was ready to destroy that bee, and I did, thank God, and I completely was just like screaming at her at the end, and the Mother Brain, and then I had to escape, and I thought that part was cool because it was reminiscent to me of Ocarina of Time, so it was kind of dope. It was a long way to go though, so I got lost and definitely blew up my first time, but then I just rewound and redid it, retracked my steps, and got to my ship, and that's how the game ended. So overall, like, if I took out all the parts that kind of annoyed me, even the parts that like made me rage quit, I felt like this was a super solid game, and it helps me feel a little bit more invested in the series as a whole, for sure.
So I want to hear about those rage quits. So like, where did you get that you were just like, I'm not playing this anymore?
Okay. First of all, this game doesn't explain anything to you. Just if I haven't said anything about that before. But you know what's so funny is video games have taught me that I need to be prepared for boss battles. I need to go in with full health. I need to go in with full armory. And I need to be prepared to avoid all hits, all everything. And I feel like there are 3 points in this game where you're not supposed to do that. You're like, it wants you to get to the brink of death, or at least get to a point where you think you're going to die. Because that's how you progress. And I didn't know that. So my first instance would be Ridley. That was like a solid 3 hours of fighting that guy total. Okay? I started in the morning, and I had so many missiles, so many super missiles, all of these, like, the mega bombs, is that what they're called?
Power bombs.
What is that? Power bombs. Thank you. I was just like, how is this guy? And you know what's funny is, like, when I figured out the secret later on, I was like, I bet you I beat Ridley at least 7 times, like, throughout that whole time that I was fighting him. Because what you're supposed to do is let Ridley pick you up when he's at 0 damage, which you don't know, by the way, because then he kind of sinks and blows up. What? How was I supposed to know that?
You don't have to do
Yes,
that.
you do.
Are you talking at the beginning?
No, at the end
of the game?
When you fight him the second time.
I don't think that's accurate.
I mean,
I don't think he picks you up.
I had to look it up because I was just like, how is he not dead? How have I shot him 17 million times and he's red as my freaking face right now, but but he's not dead.
I'm calling shenanigans on that. You don't have to let Ridley pick you up
So,
in order for him to die.
when I looked up playthroughs and I looked up different like tricks, I was like, somebody help me. It said that when he's at 0, he'll still attack you unless he picks you up, and then he sinks. He kind of can't carry you to the top like he normally does, and he blows up.
I'm gonna call shenanigans on that.
Okay, somebody can correct me, but that's how I finally beat him. I did the 20. I finally found out that you could do 20 supercharged plasma shots, and then I let him pick me up, and then he sank and died. And I was so mad. I was like, I bet you I killed him a million times and had him at 0, but I didn't let him pick me up. So, because I was like, I can't be picked up, I'll die.
No, I'm gonna call shenanigans on that.
Okay.
But okay.
You look that up and tell me. You tell me.
I don't need to look it up. I've smoked Ridley and he doesn't pick me up.
Maybe you have more like missiles than I do. I did.
That could very well be, because usually the last couple times I fought Ridley, I've had like basically every missile in the game at this point because I've been doing my 100% guide. So yeah, but I think even with like the plasma shot, I mean, it doesn't matter. But I'm calling shenanigans on that. I'll when I get my new computer and finally have access to be able to stream, I'll stream it and I'll show you.
Okay, I would like to see a different way to kill this guy, because if that really is how you're supposed to do it, how is anybody supposed to know that? Because I was so close to dying so many times that there wasn't a point where I ever wanted him to touch me.
It's not.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, that was my impression while I was playing. Anyways, continuing on to things that you're never told, I thought I was supposed to avoid Baby Metroid when you first see him again and he's huge, Super Metroid. I was like, I kept trying to go away, and every time I got caught, I was like, okay, I'm going to die, so I'm going to rewind. And I was like,
Right.
I can't progress. I'm not fast enough to avoid him. So I finally was just like, F it, I'm going to let him kill me. And then, of course, that was the point. He was supposed to notice you when you had
Right.
like 1 health left. So how was I supposed to know that? And
you can avoid him, but you have to be like really, really good. I don't think I've ever done it.
oh, okay.
But
Interesting.
it's possible.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Well, there you go. And then also the murder ray. I kept trying to rewind so I would not get attacked by that, but I was like, I swear to God, it hits me no matter where I am. So I would rewind every time I got hit, and in my brain I was like, if I get hit by this, I'm going to die. No. It's just I get a certain amount of health taken away, and then Baby Yoda comes, Baby Metroid comes and saves me.
Baby Yoda flies in. That'd be pretty awesome.
With a
Love green Baby
lightsaber,
Yoda.
just chops her head off. And like,
Okay, I can see those, but I'm going to defend my game here a little bit, whereas obviously when you play it without the rewind,
yeah,
you get the intended outcome.
right.
But I can certainly see that for sure.
Yeah, and I totally understood that after the fact. But
Yeah, you get it after, but
but of course I'm over here, and with my brain being, like, with my brain being taught by video games that I'm not supposed to get hit, I'm not supposed to get to low health because I'm going to die, I was doing everything in my power, including the rewind feature, not to. So it was just kind of interesting that there were points where I was supposed to, and I was just like, oh, okay, I don't know why I'm trying so hard. Why am I being so extra with this? So,
Right.
and everybody who's listening is probably just rolling their eyes like, Alasyn, it's not that big a deal. Like, if you played the original, obviously it wouldn't have been like that at all. But I didn't play the original, so.
No, I get that. Like, I actually totally get that. I probably would have rewound too, especially if it's like, oh my god, like, I haven't saved in a while, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were, Ridley obviously was the most frustrating, especially if I have no idea the real way that you're supposed to beat this stupid pterodactyl dinosaur dragon mother effer. So.
Did you try the shoot him a lot method?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Like.
Because that's the secret. You shoot him a lot.
I
love that fight. It's like, it's such a brawl. Like, there really isn't a secret to it. It's like, who hits harder, who hits faster, and like, You can anywhere on his body except for his tail takes damage. I love it. It's just like such a brawl. Like that's the best word for it. That's one of my favorite boss fights like ever, actually.
Really? What? I don't think it should be that hard.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be that hard at all. I mean, I understand, like, if you're going to shoot it a million times and he dies, great. But I had 100 missiles. I had, I can't remember how many, maybe 50 super missiles and at least 15 super bombs, whatever they're called. And, I was just like, it doesn't, and plus all the charged plasma shots. I was just like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I know I haven't gotten all the upgrades at this point, but I shouldn't have to beat this boss. You shouldn't have to. You know what I mean? So, I thought that was ridiculous.
Okay.
So yeah, that was.
I'll show you how it's done next time that.
Please do
that we see each other.
So...
What did you think of the rest of the bosses?
Oh, the rest of the bosses were cool. I spending all this time on the
Any of them like stand out?
I thought that. Ooh, what was in my notes? Where is that guy? What is that guy's name? Baltwoon. He looks like
Baltwoon.
He looks like Moldorm, and he gave me Bavagia vibes too. So I was like, oh, this is kind of like cool.
Yeah.
I was like, ooh, this is very Zelda. So I was down for that. I like the golden the statue.
Chorizo?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
I liked those fights. Those were kind of cool because those felt very pattern. You know, I'm seeing the pattern. Here's what I'm avoiding. Here's what I'm hitting. I like the flow of both of those fights very well.
Right.
I don't remember the other guys' names, but they're all ugly.
Oh yeah,
it's just kind of funny because I can picture Zelda bosses so clearly. Even in the 2D Zelda games, they just have very distinct, simple designs, whereas these guys look like just balls of mush and grossness. Except for the worm guy, I was like, oh, he's clearly a worm. You know? It was kind of hard to distinguish features on these bosses, which I just thought was funny. The plant one that floats back and forth, what's that guy's name?
Spore Spawn.
He reminded me of Head Thwomp, the Thwomp Head guy in the Oracle games for some reason. Just kind of gave me those vibes. Just, I don't know why, just kind of the way he moved and you were waiting for a certain point to hit him. But I liked that fight. It was a little bit easier than some of the others. And yeah. I'm trying to remember some of these other guys. Let's see, Dragon.
So, did you use the easy method to fight Dragon with the grapple beam?
I did. So, I was struggling with Dragon a bit. Oh, God, Dragon's ugly. I just looked him up. He's so ugly. But I was trying and I was struggling, but then I looked up your guide and I was like, oh, this is actually kind of cool because I like it when you have a boss fight that has like such an easy answer and it's kind of like cool and you one-shot them like Callie Deimos in Wind Waker. You just, pelt him with some forest water and he's dead. So that was kind of the similar idea with Dragon. I liked him, but it was kind of sad. His little baby's like floating down like, oh, Dad, you're dead. So that was kind of sad.
Kind of, yeah. I felt really bad for Crocomire, like the red, I don't know, you call him like a crocodile, I guess, basically.
Uh-huh.
But like when he goes into the lava and his skin melts off of his bones, I was like, bro, oh
poor
my
guy.
God, I felt so bad for him.
I liked the Crocomire fight in that it was different in that I was like doing a lot of damage and I was like, why isn't this guy dead yet? Until I figured out that he's pushing me to the wall, I need to push him back. So I kind of liked how different that was.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great fight. I just feel bad as his flesh is sizzling off of his bones.
Yeah,
you
think Zelda bosses are dramatic when they die? Oh God, why am I having such a hard time? I always have a hard time with names, but the eyeball in Skyward Sword, like he just screams bloody murder when he dies, but then you've got poor Croc over here who's just melting. That's not funny. Man. Why am I laughing? But yeah, for the most part, I thought the bosses were difficult but fun. Like I enjoyed it, and it was like when you die a bunch to a boss, but you you understand better the next time you come in and you're like, okay, here's what I'm going to avoid, here's what I'm going to do. And that's why I hated Ridley so much, because I just didn't understand what I was doing wrong after hitting him so many times. So I don't know, maybe I'll have to come back with, like, after 100%ing at to that point with Ridley and just destroy him like you do. So I don't know, something about that just was so not okay with me.
All right. Any other thoughts you had playing Super Metroid? I was anticipating you bringing up the controls for the super missiles.
Oh, the super missiles.
So essentially, when you this is, I think, the thing about Super Metroid that has aged like the least. Well, that wasn't the best way to say that, but like the thing that has aged the most poorly, I think, is the way that you switch between missiles, super missiles, the grapple beam, and X-ray scope.
Yes.
Because essentially you just have to cycle between select to do that. Yeah. Whereas in future Metroid games, even in Metroid Fusion, you hold R and your beam turns into a missile, which is, obviously a casualty of not having the, proportionate amount of buttons on the Super Nintendo controller. But I was anticipating you bringing that up and saying that it was frustrating.
I mean, I do have it in my notes. It's just that there's so much in my notes. This is a whole game, It's hard to talk about everything in 30 minutes. But yes, the controls.
Let's keep going. I'm in this for the long haul.
The controls were a little. You know what? I'm pretty sure I broke my Pro controller. So I was playing. Oh, no. I was playing this on the Pro controller, and my right thumb is a little bit sore. But I was very frustrated with a lot of the mechanics and the controls. And I wondered if I was just really, really bad at this game. But yeah, like the switching between the weapons, I kind of like gave that some grace, because I was like, this is a 30-year-old game. There are worse ways of switching through items in Zelda, in the various Zelda games. So I was like, I'm giving this some grace. And that's kind of how I thought about it. And it's kind of funny because I just came off of playing Portia for several weekends. And in Portia, you just press I think it's either R or the D-pad buttons to move between your items, and I was just like, that would be an easy fix. Like, just put the D-pad as your switcher, and it'll just switch through the items and be no big deal. So I was like, I'll give that some grace. But like wall jumping was a whole hot mess for me, especially when you have to wall jump at certain points, and I was just very frustrated because I don't know. I felt like it should have been Mario-like with wall jumping, where you kind of like grab the wall and can jump. But no, you literally have to be spinning, which I still can't figure out how I exactly was doing that, because at some points I thought you had to be jumping farther to one side to do it. But there was sometimes where I was like barely touching the sideways buttons and was able to spin. So I don't know. Right. And you have to be spinning, and you have to be touching the wall and go directly the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And with this is why I was wondering if it was easier on the original controls, because with the Pro controls, I don't know if anybody's noticed this while playing Breath of the Wild or any other game. The D-pad and the joystick, they're finicky. Like the hitboxes on those, you could be pressing sideways, but it's going to activate your runes in Breath of the Wild instead. And I'm like, no, I don't want runes. I want something else. So I knew that was my problem. I knew that my directions were not as precise, even though I was going left or right. You know what I mean?
You know what? You asked me before the show if I thought the SNES controller was easier, and actually I'm gonna actually change my answer, because I think I said I hadn't played it on the SNES in a while. But when I play Super Metroid on the Switch, I actually typically I don't use the joystick. I use the buttons instead to move.
Yeah.
Particularly because it more resembles a D-pad, in that, like, if you try and wall jump with the joystick, it certainly is a little bit tougher, because you want to be pressing directly opposite when you wall jump.
Yes.
And I think that with a lot of people, me included, a lot of people's instinct when they're performing a wall jump is to tilt it the opposite direction, but also upwards, because that's the direction that you're headed, is you're trying to go up. So I think that having the buttons kind of as a replacement for the D-pad is certainly easier. But I think that it's also just like practice and getting used to it. Because I don't think that there's any point in Super Metroid where like you have to wall jump. I don't think so. But if you can, then you can actually wall jump straight up. So you can jump, curve, and then hit the same wall and just go like right up. I use this pretty extensively in my guide for some early items if you can get it. So like once you can get it, it's like super, super satisfying. But it certainly does take a little bit of practice. And I think I will say that I want to say wall jumping gets a little bit easier in Fusion and Zero Mission and Dread, but it doesn't have the same kind of like, it doesn't have the same versatility in Super Metroid. So like when you wall jump in those games, you jump the opposite direction and you go like hard the other direction. So there's no chance that you can bend your jump up and then jump on the same wall and go up. Whereas in Super Metroid, a lot of people say that Super Metroid is like a very floaty game. And I guess that's true, but since I played Super Metroid first, I kind of think that the physics of that game are the standard, and like these other games are kind of just like heavy.
Oh,
so take that for what you will.
I see what you're saying. I know exactly what you're talking about. To go back to the D-pad thing, I definitely realized it was easier, but like I said, the D-pad on the Switch Pro controller, maybe it's different on the Joy-Con. It's just finicky. Like I could be pressing left, but it thinks I'm pressing up. So it's dumb, and some people, especially in my streaming circle, know what I'm talking about. So there's that. But as far as the floaty thing, I totally get that, because there are tiny AF platforms in this game that you're trying to land on, especially if you're running, for your life, like at the beginning and the end of this game. And you're like over here spinning and floating through the air, and I'm like, no, I just want to kind of jump on this one platform here, and it's super small and I'm going to miss it because I'm spinning all over the place, So I kind of get that, and it actually makes me happier that it's a little more heavy when you're in the air. I kind of like the thought of that going forward. So
right.
I'm okay with that. Maybe I'm just maybe you guys are just way better at wall jumping than I am. For some reason, I'm used to like Mario wall jumping. I'm used to Sheik wall jumping in Smash Bros. And that's just, it's a little bit more graceful to you than you need to press directly across and jump. I was just struggling with that a lot. So I think the wall jumping was my big issue. There is a part, I want to say it's in Meridia or whatever, where you do have to, you have to wall jump up this cliff. Like, there's at least one that I know there's no way to go around it. You just have to. And I was like, F, I'm going to be here forever. And I was. But aside from that, I was okay for a lot of the stuff. I really liked the speed boost. I think that is the most satisfying part of that game.
Oh, so good.
It's really cool, and you just blow through walls and enemies, and I thought that was just awesome, and I loved using it.
Did you ever learn how to shine spark?
I actually didn't. I skipped that.
Okay. That is satisfying, is when you shine spark and like you're flying like a bullet at people, and then you just like crash through something, and it's so awesome.
I kind of wish
there's tons of like really awesome shine spark puzzles in the series.
Yeah, I kind of wish that was like more of a mandatory thing, but I think at that point of the game I was like, okay, I really need to keep going here and like get to the end at least, and I'll come back and do these things later. So I totally skipped that one because it was optional. I also like the super bombs. What are they called? Why do I keep forgetting what they're called?
Power bombs.
Power bombs. I like those. Those are cool. They kind of give me. I just am so bad at names, but they give me the Boba Fett and Jango Fett bomb vibes. Those really cool sonic bomb things in Star Wars. They kind of gave me those vibes, and I really dug that item a lot too. So there was definitely stuff I really liked as far as controls and items and upgrades, but obviously there was stuff that I didn't like, so right. I was trying really hard to be graceful with my thoughts about it because I knew it was a 30-year-old game.
Okay, well, you're in charge here. Any other notes you wanna bring up, talk about, or
the room getting up to Mother Brain is unnecessary. Why does that room... The one where all these projectiles are coming at you and you have to waste all your missiles on these like red wall things. What?
Zbestiates is what they are called, and the Rinkas are what is shooting at you. That's actually, so that sequence is the ending of the original Metroid game.
Really?
Yep, that's the final boss, is that sequence in that room where you have to strike the red barriers like quickly or else they regenerate.
Oh,
it's super, super tough.
Is that what was happening to me? Okay, that makes sense.
There's a really awesome skip actually that you can do if you can kind of glitch your way past the first red barrier. The one after it only populates after the one in front of it is destroyed. So if you can skip past the first one, none of them actually populate, so you can just go right to Mother Brain.
Okay, interesting. I thought it was unnecessary and stupid, and I was mad because by the time I got to... And you know what? I realize now that there was a point to that room, but getting up to Mother Brain, I was like, this is my final boss fight. Why the heck is this room exist where it's just trying to get me as low health as possible before I fight the final boss? Like, this is just so stupid.
Well, that's the final boss. That room.
Well, okay. I mean, I feel like it makes sense now, knowing that you're supposed to be hit by the murder ray and almost die in order for baby Metroid to come save you. Like, I get it now. But at the point, I was at the time.
To be fair, if you have low enough health and you're hit by the murder ray, like, you're toast.
Yeah, dead.
So you got to have a number of health to survive the murder ray. And all the debris that comes to you after, for that matter.
Yeah, but the thing is that most people at this point, if you're a completionist, probably have several energy tanks. I didn't. I had like 5 or 6. So I was struggling. I just thought that room was so stupid. Aside from that, I like the idea of completing this game 100%. I think it's doable, makes a lot of sense, you know, getting all the upgrades so that you have the max amount of weapons. I think that is, you know, when you compare it to something like 900 Korok seeds, I feel like that is very doable and like a good choice. It was solid. And I will be doing that at some point. But aside from that, that's a lot of what I have on my notes, though. My notes were kind of all over the place, and I apologize if I was all over the place explaining this game.
All right, so let's bring it home here, because I don't know if we have any Zelda fans that are still listening to this Metroid podcast in disguise, but you're a lifelong Zelda fan. You're playing Metroid for the first time. Would Zelda fans like this, or is this too different? Or I guess any final thoughts you have, share away, and then let's get out of here.
I think that... Oh, and I have to say my hot take, too. We'll end with that. That's a fun thing.
Okay. Yeah, I almost forgot about that. I'm ready for this. I don't know if I'm going to like it.
I feel like either it'll be like, oh, whatever she said, or people will be mad. So we'll see. If you're a Zelda fan, I feel like this has enough Zelda elements that you'll enjoy it. I think it's definitely harder than Zelda, so if you want a challenge, you should play this game or this series, because it kind of sounds like other Metroid games are also just as difficult, if not more so. The boss fights, you know, it very much feels like you're playing Zelda, where you go through an area, you find secrets, you find items, you defeat enemies, and then you get to a boss fight and you beat the boss, and you go back with your new items and get some more secrets and some more power-ups and more items, and then you go beat the next boss until you get up to the big bad at the end, in which you're saving something, whether it's Zelda or Baby Metroid. It's very much the same formula. It's just a different, you know, coat of paint and a little bit harder. I think there are definitely parts where people have difficulties in Zelda and they've rage quit and been upset by certain bosses or whatever, and this is very much the same. Like, it's the same thing, just space and a lot grittier and darker and cool music.
Very atmospheric.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I think that's the greatest thing about Metroid. I feel like, is its atmosphere and just that sense of isolation and hopelessness on this lost alien planet. Like when you first start off Super Metroid and like you're in Criteria and like the rain is pouring and there's that ominous music. I mean, that's just great stuff.
Yeah, I like that part. I like that stuff a lot too. So I think that if you haven't dipped your toes in the Metroid yet, like me, I think you'd be fine if you did. And maybe you'll be like me and have more interest in the rest of the series and possibly getting into it in the future. All right. Are you ready for my hot take?
Let's hear it. Yeah, I'm ready.
If you enjoy this hot mess of not knowing where to go, going back and forth, it's just trying to figure out where to go to next, using items to progress further, and this is hard. Like, this is difficult. If you are like me and you're just trying to get through the game and not really want to think for hours and hours on end about it, it's difficult. But if you like that, I feel like you have nothing to complain about with Tower of the Ocean King. I don't know why any of you are complaining if you like this.
Wow. All right, Alasyn, Aletha, my friend. You know what a few differences are between Tower of the Ocean King and the world of Super Metroid? Let me tell you something. First, the world of Super Metroid is ginormous and is not this one tower with this very small box of floors that you have available to explore. Second, the world of Super Metroid is diverse with different music, different areas, different environments, whereas the Tower of the Ocean King is the same purpley blue tiles and walls for the entire time. Third, I don't know that is necessarily... I can see the crux of your point, actually, so I'm not going to completely rip it, but I think that there's a big difference between exploring the whole world and that diverse biosphere versus getting into a Zelda world and then being forced to come back to the same place over and over and over, which you do. I mean, technically you do that in Metroid as well, but like, it's not like you go back to the same spot in Brinstar 6 times and progress on that one wall further. Typically, if you get an item in point C, you can go back to point D and then explore that area fully, and then you're done with that area. But
I mean,
I can see the genesis of your point.
Yeah, and I know there's differences. I understand that. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm just saying there's a lot of backtracking in Metroid. It's kind of frustrating. Like, I'm just like, I really don't want to go through these same rooms over and over and over again. And here's why I think... This is why I compared him. I was like, I bet Andy Spiteri over here, who's very efficient at this game and knows it like the back of his hand, doesn't have the same problem that I'm having because I don't know this game at all. Where I'm backtracking, I'm going in circles, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. It's getting kind of boring at this point. I would like to progress. Whereas me, with the Tower of the Ocean King, I know how to get through it quickly. I know how to get through it efficiently. And you got people who are complaining because they have to come back to it, backtrack, come back with new items to go a different route through the floors, and I just think that the premise is similar, and if you like the harder version of that, you would be just fine in Tower of the Ocean King and not really have an issue.
I can respect what you're saying, definitely. I don't think that that's wrong either, whereas like, if you know how to efficiently do it, then it's really not that bad. I think it just comes down to like what I said earlier, like the planet Zebes is this incredible biosphere of different atmosphere, music, areas, and the Tower of the Ocean King is the same generic music with the same color walls and the same color floors and the same ugly DS graphics of Link that is like squished down. So that's where the difference therein lies. Like when I played Metroid Dread, I was backtracking all over the place because I didn't know where to go, but I really enjoyed that. Whereas like, I don't know, even with like Tower of the Ocean King, it's not like you backtrack necessarily. It's just like, oh god, I have to redo this stuff. Whereas like in Super Metroid, if you finally get a super missile and you blast open that green door, it's not like you have to re-blast it with a super missile every time. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so I just feel like, I don't know, like if you are okay with this, then maybe Tower of the Ocean King should be cake for you, and you like... It shouldn't be that big a deal. I don't know why you're complaining. I like Tower of the Ocean King a little bit better sometimes.
Wow.
Just at some point.
Well, that's an ice cold take right there. That's a lifeless corpse take that's been hidden in a freezer for. Well, anyways, that's neither here nor there. All right. Well, thank you, Al, for sharing your thoughts on Super Metroid. with me and with us, and thank you guys for sticking around for this not really Zelda episode. But man, I felt like it was such an important time in this series that I really wanted to talk about it and maybe talk about some Zelda intertwined with that as well. But that is neither here nor there. We are going to get out of and of course, while you're over on Twitter, follow me. I am at Spateri316, and follow Alasyn at Alasyn Aletha. We are out. We want to encourage everybody to get on over to Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe to the Champions Cast, and we will see you all next week. Take care, everybody.